Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Tuesday, June 10th, 2025, episode 410, and we're going to talk about the missing point of view. That would be the business owners in LA. Business owners or property owners. People are taking sides on the riots. Maybe they're taking the side of the rioters, maybe the illegal immigrants. Maybe they're taking the side of ICE, Donald Trump, the Marines, National Guard. I mean, who knows, right? And everyone is, by taking a side, what you're basically saying is this aspect of this event is the most important, and therefore all other perspectives must bow down to theirs. Yeah, maybe, but there is that one perspective which is not really being discussed on the mainstream media because to do so makes it obvious whose side you should be on, right? Um, and that would be the perspective of the property owners, the people who live there. On X, you can find like what happened last night was a jewelry store. They lost $2 million in merchandise. I saw a video of a convenience store where the owner is trying to hold the doors shut, but obviously the looters are going to barge in there and they loot his convenience store. And I'm sure that there are many, many, many other stores like oh yeah, of course, there was a Apple store that was raided. Um, there are shoe stores, I guess. So there are a lot of businesses being looted. Some of them are corporate, maybe. So they're only managers in the store, not necessarily the owners of the actual store. But I'm sure that there are family-owned businesses there as well. Uh, but there's no video, right? So I'm not sure about the standard of living or the kind of neighborhood. But if you have a jewelry store in your neighborhood and looks pretty large, then it's got to be probably a higher end part of town. And I only mention this because I think of the LA riots that happened in 1991 and 91, 92. And there it was more on the lower end neighborhoods, right? Because it was mostly bodegas that were burned. But now you got a high-end jewelry store, you got all these more expensive type stores. So the neighborhood seems to be better, and yet the police are not stepping in. And I would bet that at least half or more of those stores are immigrant owned or children of immigrants, right? So it becomes a family kind of type situation, but they are immigrants, right? They're part of the demographic that these people are trying to protect, but they're destroying their businesses. Right. And so, in other words, these businesses, though they might seem to non-business owners to be rich, they're not Wall Street rich, right? And if you know anything about immigrant businesses, you know that they cannot invest money in the way that people who have been here for a while and people who work on Wall Street, they can't use their money in the same way. So they're not protected. They don't have those ways, avenues to be able to preserve their wealth. A lot of people are on the verge of bankruptcy. People don't understand that, but it's either make or break, right? So, especially if you're just starting out, uh, you are literally on the verge of bankruptcy unless you can make your business, you know, generate enough revenue to be able to cover all of your bills. My parents had experience with owning businesses, in spite of the fact that my father was a pastor, he was a professor, but he was also a saver. And so, in order to help fund the construction of our church, the church building, my mom went into business. She bought a bodega and tried to do business, right? And so she did a several, like a grocery and then a dry cleaning drop shop. But it's very, very high risk, right? You're using your own personal savings. And then if you, a lot of people, in order to take a loan out, you have to use your own house as collateral. And usually insurance is not purchased, right? Because there's so many different kinds of insurance. There's fire insurance, there's, uh, you know, I guess robbery insurance. But to buy all of that, it eats into your profit margin. And to make it worth doing that business, and often in very high risk neighborhoods, you don't buy those insurances to be able to save money and to be able to make more money so you're not having to stay there for longer than you need to, right? So you want to go in, make your money, and then get out as soon as you can because it's a dangerous place to do business. And so a lot of businesses do not carry insurance. So, and I've had lots of students who would said, "Oh, it's okay to burn them down because they have insurance." Probably not, right? And even if they did have insurance, payouts or compensation from the insurance company is very, very slow. All right. So there's an investigation to make sure that the business owner didn't do it to himself just to collect the money. And then it takes a while, right? How long depends, I guess, where you are and what the rules and regulations are at the time. So I was watching the movie Twisters last night, and I watch a little bit of a movie at a time. And so I got to the point where the one woman in the movie, she says, "Oh, look at these guys. They're taking advantage of the people who own these properties, right? They're destroyed by the tornado. They're uh, offering to buy their property, but at a price that's way below market value. So they're being taken advantage of. And that, of course, is the source of a lot of misunderstanding. Hollywood movies perpetuate bad understanding of this type of situation because sometimes in order to get the payout from your destroyed home, it takes years, right? Years. And a lot of times you're still paying mortgage on it. And on top of that, you have to pay rent on the place where you're going to stay. So for a lot of people, just waiting around 2, 3 years to get the money for your home, right? And that can only happen after someone assesses the damage, right? My wife was telling me that some of the people who lost everything in the hurricanes we had over the winter, if their property hasn't even been assessed yet. So you're talking about, okay, so do I have anything saved? Can I wait it out? How am I going to do this? So some people who can't wait, right? Maybe they're elderly, maybe they have a disability, they would rather just take the money, move somewhere else than have to wait around and have bills that are continuing to pile up on top of everything else, right? So just give people a choice. As long as there's a choice, you can't have exploitation, right? And if the makers of Twisters really wanted to help those people, you would pull out all of the regulatory uh, burdens, which slow down construction, which slow down assessment, which slow down the payout of insurance companies. That's what you should do. But of course, it's not as sexy to take that point of view. So you're going to take the easy, ignorant one, which is, oh, they're taking advantage of people. So, especially if you had to take a loan out, I mentioned this already, but if you had to take a loan out to build your business, to start your business, right? How do you pay it back while you're waiting for an insurance payout, right? And if you used your house as collateral, and I know people who've done that, maybe it's ill-advised. But if you're young and you're trying to start a business, then anything you have that can be used collateral, that's what you're going to do. And so if your business closes, then you lose your house as well. And a lot of people who, never done business, you don't understand just how high risk a venture like that is. And I know some people look for investors and things of that sort, but that's on a different scale, right? So we're talking about small businesses, and that's what some of the things that people have to do in order to get it started. Now, the leftist Democrats, they don't care because the small business owners are part of the bourgeoisie, right? They are the ones that need to be eradicated. And so they're not going to defend them at all. And so those protesters, whether they're paid, and we're going to get into who are these people anyway, in a moment. But yeah, a lot of politicians, people who like to post things about situation like this on X or any other social media, they don't care, right? Because that's not the important issue. The important issue is illegal immigration, deported people being deported who have legal residency status here. That's the priority, right? And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm saying that there are more uh, points of view that are important for different people all at the same time. So how do you resolve? How do you prioritize all of that? And I'll get to that at the end of this episode, right? So basically, you know, people on the right, they don't really focus on small business owners either because they want more control, right? They have another agenda, right? Maybe it's more surveillance. So they have something else in the works as well. And so that may explain why there are hardly any small business owners doing interviews on the major networks. So who are these protesters, right? And what are they protesting? Are they protesting ICE? Or was the whole ICE, people cracking down on illegal immigration, is it just simply the spark or the excuse for other people to hit the streets, right? So you got people who want to protest, the actions of ICE and the way they're doing it, right? And so you got them, and they're probably peaceful. But then as soon as you see that on TV, then you have all of these other people who are sitting on their couch saying, time to suit up, right? Some of them are paid agitators, actors, or participants, just like in January 6th or the color revolutions that we that I talked about yesterday, or people pretending to be supporters of a political candidate, right? They're paid like 25 bucks an hour or whatever to stand on a corner, hold a sign, wear a uniform, right, to show some kind of support or solidarity with the candidate who just happens to be in town. So a lot of these people are paid. And then you have groups of people who uh, are taking advantage of the chaos, right? They're seizing the opportunity provided by the chaos. And these would be professionals, professional gangs, professional looters, and also people who love violence. And I found this out recently. I think I talked about it in another episode, but oh yeah, yeah. Someone in my church told me that one morning someone came up to him and offered, you know, uh, to sell him all these clothes. And he's like, what, why? And so basically he has a trunk full of stolen property and he's looking to unload them at really cheap, right? So these may be $100 jeans, but he's selling, 20 of them for 200 bucks, right? Something like that. And and so he's like, okay. And that's where all of the looted property goes. The people who run out of stores with armfuls of merchandise, right? And I always wondered that if you're going to loot a store, don't you take the stuff that's your size? No, you grab anything because you're only going to resell it to try to make money, right? That's their job, to loot other people's stuff like a Viking and then resell it. But of course, you don't get wealthy this way. You just simply destroy value in society. So people who purchase the stolen property, why would they go shopping at the actual store when sooner or later someone's going to loot it and you can just buy it off the street for a much cheaper price? And then you have those people who just love to see things burn, right? It's like the Joker in the Batman movie, right? Um, it it's so true. Some people just love to see things burn. And then you have ignoramuses who have nothing better to do. They're bored, they're unemployed, living with their parents, who knows, whatever. But they just want to go out there and have some fun. But I would bet that most of them do not live there, right? You don't burn your own house in protest. You burn someone else's house, right? And so a lot of those people, they don't even live there. So yeah, there's that as well. So what's the fallout? The long-term effect? Well, businesses don't go back because it is now a high-risk neighborhood. You can't get insurance, right? Even if you did get a payout eventually, if you try to reinsure a business because you're going to build in the same spot, yeah, you won't be able to afford the insurance because the insurance premium, the cost of the insurance just went through the roof. So you can't get insurance anymore. And if you can't get insurance this time, well, you're not going to put your business there because the next time that it gets looted or burned down, you're not going to get anything from the insurance company, or the insurance company doesn't want to cover that. And so you don't go back to that location. And so the neighborhood suffers. But the protesters don't care, again, as I said, because they don't live there. Uh, and then if you want to start a business, that has to be a consideration. And so if you do start a business in that neighborhood, it's not going to be a high-end business. It's going to be like a bodega, like a little corner grocery store, right? Where comparatively speaking, right, it's not going to be a jewelry store, is what I'm saying, right? I'm not saying that a grocery store is really cheap. I'm not saying that at all. It's actually very, very expensive. So then the question is, how do people like Newsom and Bass keep getting elected? I mean, the mass media, they say things like peacefully watching businesses and cars burn. It's kind of weird, right? And it's harkens back to the mostly peaceful riots of BLM, right? It's just ridiculous. Um, as long as there is no accountability in the political class, for the political class, or for the rioters. Like there is no accountability. There's no penalty for engaging in this kind of behavior. It's going to get worse, right? It will continue to happen and it will get worse. And I think certain people want it to get worse, which is why they don't talk about the perspective of the business owner. You don't have interviews with them, like what did you lose? And where do you go from here? What's the long-term effect on the neighborhood? You're not going to talk about those things because then you'll have public opinion sway against the rioters, right? Against the protests. And you saw that with BLM, right? You don't want people to side against BLM. No, you want people to side with them and give them more donations, right? So Trump's response, of course, it doesn't follow the law, right? It might be what a lot of people wish would happen, but it doesn't follow the law. And so therefore it creates even more problems or even bad precedents, right? So like federalizing the National Guard, that's very, very bad. And I've talked about posse comitatus before, which is that a law which says you cannot use the U.S. military on your domestic soil. That's why you have National Guard, right? You can't use the military. That's what happens in third world countries. The army comes out and starts shooting the people, right? You don't want that. But that's what some people are calling for, which sets a very, very bad precedent, right? And so people who live there, they have to live in the bed that they created, right? So they may or may not have voted for it, but they should have seen the signs in the sky and just closed up shop and left as soon as possible. I think LA is a microcosm of not only the United States, but of what the US government does to other countries all over the place. And, it's unfortunate, but something like this could come to a blue city near you. Babylon B had a thing, had an art, I'll paraphrase it, and I'm doing this from memory, where you have some people walking through, homeless people, fentanyl addicts, things are burning, and what the middle class couple is saying, but the weather is so nice, you know. Well, if you're staying for the weather, well, maybe you shouldn't live or do business in LA. Then people like Bass, who's the mayor of LA, would only have bums and drug addicts to govern. So again, the solution is for Trump to have said, okay, we're not going to do anything. You deal with it, right? And then for people to flee and eventually find what is the best response. And then if Newsom gets so desperate and he says, okay, Trump, send in the National Guard, well, then okay. But I do think that the erosion of property rights, like the inability of business owners to defend their property against people who will do violence to them and destroy their property, I think that is a serious, serious problem. I don't know what the laws of if castle doctrine extends to looting or what is maybe that's why looters don't carry around firearms, right? Because there's, I think, a equal force response that is part of self-defense, right? And so if none of your looters have firearms, you can't shoot at them, which is, I don't know. They're about to ruin your life. You have to be able to do something. And whatever that something is, it should be extremely strong to the level where it can discourage this kind of behavior, whatever that might be. Uh, Consult with your local law enforcement. But anyway, that's it. I just wanted to raise the issue that there is a missing point of view. You see a little bit on X, but it should be a lot, uh, much more represented, not only on Twitter, but also in the mainstream. That's it for this episode. I'll talk to you next time.